This is the Brattlecast, the podcast that's really all about books, reading, writing, the people who write them, the people who read them, and the value that we find in books, rare, old, out of print, and unusual. Today, Ken Gloss is with me, of course, and something a little off the beaten path. I might say, bartender, what's your poison? And you have an answer for me today.
Yes, I have a book, and here's the title, Directions on the Treatment of Persons who have taken poison.
Oh, jeez.
And those in a state of apparent death, together with poisons in alterations of wine. But
well, first of all,
and it's in the early 1800s.
I was just going to ask the date. It looked like an old book.
Yeah, it's the first American edition, done in 1819 in Baltimore.
I don't believe they called it slipping somebody a Mickey at that point, but
yeah, I think they were getting at that.
They were getting it. So, what's the backstory on this book? It looks fascinating.
Well, it's a book that just came in with a collection. I don't know whether it was someone gave it to a doctor or maybe a criminologist, or maybe they said, you're not too happy with that person. Read this one.
So these are mainly antidotes to poisons?
It's mainly antidotes, but for instance, it tells you properties of the nitrates of silver.
Oh, yes.
And mercury. It tells you the effects. Mm-hmm. You've rendered by many as poisonous. It tells you how you start getting very sick. Liver of sulfur. It tells you how it affects your liver. And then it tells you the treatment. And I don't think 2 spoonfuls of vinegar help.
That'll cure anything.
Lemon juice
also
helps.
A good cure.
Yeah, and in a glass full of water, and let several of those doses be taken. I don't know how that happens.
Who's the creator of this project? Who's the writer?
Let's see what the name of the author is. It's by Orfila, 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 translated by H.H. Black, surgeon.
Okay.
But it's just, you read through, and of course it's telling you how to treat and how to effects of poisonous fish. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind, it tells you how to treat it, tells you the effects, but it also might be a cookbook.
I was going to say a primer for murderers, giving you all the ingredients to the poison cocktails.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, and I didn't find the section. I was looking for it earlier, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere on arsenic, because we were talking that one of my favorite movies was Arsenic and Old Lace.
Oh, yes.
And, but, or you read, I remember the Claudius series that was on TV. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think her name was Livia, told her son, don't eat the figs, because she had poisoned every fig on a tree. But it's fascinating to read through. Now, it's not only fascinating from a how to do it phase, but also how to treat. And you realize, like that treatment I gave, put some lemon juice and so on, that, boy, if you got poisoned by any of these things in that time, good luck.
This is pretty much like going to the Google and finding out how do you cure poison ivy, in a sense. But this was the standard of the day.
This was one of the standards of the day. And, of course, if you were a doctor, almost anything that you ran into could be poisonous. And even a lot of herbs, medicines, I know they have scorpions in there, bugs and so on. And what you also have to realize about that time was nowadays, if you get a little cut, you're probably fine. Maybe you put some antiseptic on it or so on. But at that time, even a little antiseptic you didn't have, and a tiny scratch or cut could be deadly.
Could be deadly, absolutely. I'm looking at the table of contents. Of the wasp, bee, gnat, hornet, gadfly, tarantula, spider, etc., animals give rise to poisonous symptoms. I mean, this is, if you were allergic to the bee sting and you wanted to anaphylactic shock, you're cooked. Your goose is cooked.
Basically cooked. But I'm sure it also is telling you if you get stung by the bee, what you do to ease the pain and soothe the pain.
Right.
And
and most of the cures, if you will, were just natural ingredients hanging around the house. I'm looking at this.
What else did they have?
They didn't have anything.
But it sure tells you what the poisons are.
So, Mr. Holmes, you would want to know about these so that when you investigate the scene of a crime, you would know how the person was done away with.
Exactly, and I'm. Who knows? Maybe Arthur Conan Doyle read this book.
Well, I was going to say, in a way, it would be a good reference to somebody who's writing a historical fiction piece about the era.
Yeah, and it tells you the effects of the poison and how they wear off and how they don't. But it's more almost saying, I bought a collection of books. There was an average, normal collection. There wasn't, and there were a couple of old books in it, and Now, I sometimes wonder where this person got the book. They weren't a doctor. They weren't in medical.
Well, I noticed the inscription. There's 1912. There's somebody...
Yeah, that was 1912, which is about 100 years after the book was published.
Right.
Probably, someone just wrote their name in it. Now, maybe a doctor had it, maybe a dentist, maybe who knows. But the person who I bought it from in a collection, there was no other. There wasn't a whole shelf of books on poisons and that. But it makes you realize every time you look at something, you look at a book, there's something interesting there. It's fun.
Again, I keep coming back to the history comes alive. You can place
or
yourself...
dead in this case.
Or dead in this case. You find out how and why people were thinking the way they did, and knowing what we know today, how they couldn't have thought of anything else. I mean, it's not as though they were missing the ball. I mean, there was no scientific development at that point that would have given them more. But yet they figured out ways to make life a little more bearable.
Wines adulterated by lead. Wines adulterated by lead. So I guess wines, maybe if the when they process them or so on, a lot of lead. Maybe they use lead containers.
Right.
Sugar of lead. So that's a big problem. Oh, and it talks about the difference between white wines and red wines, and I wonder if the lead made them taste better, even though it might have.
The fact that they knew that there was a connection between ill health and some of these properties.
After probably a few people drank and keeled over.
Yeah, it's kind of like the old water in the town square until somebody figured out it was killing people left and right.
But, when that's talking, though, like something like wines or foods, or you realize that having a book like this could be quite valuable, too, because if you're made aware that when you make wine like this, lead gets into the wine and you'll start to see these symptoms, hopefully the winemaker would say,
yes,
I've got to do something.
You're killing your customers.
Yeah, exactly. But that's sort of the variety of things that I deal with day to day every time. And then, like I say, then you wonder about Sherlock Holmes. You worry about, think about movies.
I worry about Professor Moriarty in this case because there's a whole book full of
exactly, but
possibilities.
Exactly, and you just sort of have fun with it, and then quite honestly, I recently saw a Nova show just on poisonous marine animals, and they were explaining that on some of these poisons, if you get them down, filter them out, use them properly, they can be anecdotes to a lot of other diseases.
Antidotes.
Antidotes, yes.
You're telling anecdotes, just so you know.
Yes.
I often make that mistake myself. By the way, I've interviewed many, many authors, including current-day authors, and some of whom have told me, there's only so much you can look up on the Internet, really.
Yeah.
And sometimes a book like that would be such a treasure to somebody who's writing, let's say Caleb Carr, who's writing in the 1850s or 60s motif. So that's another reason why people in the writing field should get in touch with you if they need some help.
Well, absolutely. Or if someone is a scientist. And, many times some of the great scientific discoveries with medicines and so on are because someone read, they used this herb back in the 1500s or 1400s, and then they do a little of, okay, well, why would you use that? Why would that be? And then they start studying it. I mean, even things like, you keep vampires away by wearing garlic.
Yes.
Well, garlic, if you eat a lot of garlic, supposedly that helps with colds and sickness.
Oh, it helps with your arterial system, everything.
Right. So wearing garlic to keep the vampire away was a way of saying garlic was a curative and kept the fear. So reading the old books many times can lead to new discoveries.
How about a glass of apple cider vinegar to wash it all down?
Well, I'll have the wine first.
Okay. We poison the mind with good things, a drug that's difficult to wean yourself off of, and that's the love of books.
In almost any subject you can think of, there's something to talk about.
Which is why you keep showing up on Jeopardy as the subject matter of questions. At least once.
It's been once, but we're looking for the next one.
Okay. He's Ken Gloss. I'm Jordan Rich. You've been listening to the Brattlecast. Always, always something interesting. As much fun as I have, we know a lot of listeners around the world are having as much fun, too. So, Ken, thank you. We'll catch you next time.
I will be ready with more things.